If I get a review or I get somebody say to me, your book reminded me so much of when I was a Jesus person, and it really broke my heart. And I realized I haven't been walking with him in the same kind of dynamic or bold way. That to me is the big fat success. That's the big win. And I just say, Lord, you bring your fruit from this. You harvest this. You're going to be the one that decides whether or not my book is a success.
Welcome back to the Business of Christian Fiction. I'm Rachel Fehrenbach, your host, and joining me today is Marline Williams. Marline has actually been on the podcast before with the release of her book, All Men Are Liars. And that came out. When did that actually release?
That came out September 1 last year.
Last year. But I asked her to come back on the podcast because she's releasing her sequel. And I thought it would be really interesting. And what's the title of the sequel? Love the
This
One
is
You're With.
Love the One You're With.
Ooh, so exciting. So proud of you. I don't think enough is said about how much work it is to even release a book, more or less release a sequel to a book. So you should be immensely proud of yourself. But I asked Marline to come back on the podcast because I wanted to see what she learned from her last book, maybe what she might be doing a little bit differently as far as the business side of releasing the book. And so I'm excited about our conversation today. I think those of you who are listening are going to learn some really great information from Marline. She's a wealth of information. She's such an amazing person to talk to. So why don't we just dive right in with my very first question for you?
Great.
How did your last book release go?
Well, All Men Are Liars released, as I said, last year, September 1st, and it's been exactly a year. So I feel like I'm in a big fat rhythm now. I've got two books that released on September 1st. So now we know where book 3 is, hopefully, Lord willing, coming out next September 1st. So you guys can start praying now because the writing commences soon. I think it went really well. And I was just saying to Rachel before we started taping that I'm not really a metrics girl, and I tried my best to look up the metrics on this, and being me failed miserably because Amazon is doing some kind of new hocus pocus with their things. But I sold some books. All of the money, all the proceeds from the books go to Young Life, a Goes to Young Life organization, and that's true for the second book as well. So I just figure, well, Lord, however much money you want Young Life to get this year, this is my little contribution to Young Life. And so I focus on the books sort of as a whole and not just as the metrics. I do some live events where I'm selling books to real people in real time. It's very exciting with real money. It's such a strange sensation. And, I lower the prices for students and alumni if I'm on a campus. And so it's really kind of a catch-all sort of business model that I'm just trying to take advantage of every opportunity that God brings into my life to say, I'll just drag along 10 books and see if I can unload them somehow. So my business acumen is a little lacking in the metrics department. I'm sorry to say.
No,
I
I
could
think
use a
that's
VA. I could use a VA that's really hep with accounting. I need to get like some numbers person to help me out as a VA one of these years.
well, when you're ready for that, send me a message because I know somebody.
Okay, you got a deal. See how this is how it works, folks. Okay,
Yes.
this is real time. This is real time wheeling and dealing right here.
So you bring up a really great I love the fact that you're like, I'm not a metrics girl. You're not, but you are somebody who understands opportunity and being ready for opportunity. And so I think that's really important to point out to those who are joining us in our conversation that you didn't just put the book up on Amazon and cross your fingers. You put it up on Amazon, but you've been doing the work. You're pounding the pavement. You're taking advantage of events. You're carrying books along with you, and you're not just waiting for things to happen. You're trying to make opportunities for things to happen.
Yeah, yeah, I do. And I have that, as we discussed last time, I have a marketing background, and half of marketing, what they'll say is half of your marketing is going to work, but you really don't know which half. So unless you have like a little code or something that people can say, I bought this because I saw it on XYZ, then you really don't know if that was the reason they bought it or because their friend recommended it to them. They bought it, but why you don't know. So I try half of it is showing up with product.
Mhm.
It's just like be there, have the trunk of your car fully loaded before you go
Mhm.
anywhere, and always have your business card with you, goodness sake, because you're in line in the grocery store, excuse me, and so you're standing there online and you're talking with people and they say, "Well, what do you do?" And you just go whip and you whip out your little business card and you say, "Well, I write books." And people are instantly fascinated. What kind of books do you write? How can I get them? And if you don't have your card, you've just lost an opportunity to either talk to them about what it is to be a Christian author or how to get your book. So you just kind of want to be prepared for that.
I love that idea. I love the idea of having a business card. I tend to forget about those. Me personally, I
We
need
are
to do
taught
better
you
about.
keep two business cards, you keep your two pockets. You have two
Okay.
pockets in your blazer, and in one you have your card, and when you pull it out, you hand them two cards. Keep one and give one to somebody that might be interested in my book. That way you've doubled your impact with that particular person. And then you ask them, "Do you have a card?" And then you take the card from them. You write a little something on the card to help you remember this person. This person had two daughters in English class, and that's why she, was interested in my English background. Then you put that in your other pocket. Then when you get home, you pull out all the things in your one pocket and you email every single person that you contacted and say, "I was so happy to meet you." You send them any of your information that you couldn't jam onto your card. You send a little note like, "I hope your daughters are doing well in English class. I think that's wonderful that you blah, blah, blah." So you're making a little connection and then you ask them, "Would you like to sign up for my email subscription list?" So you're sort of leveraging every point of contact, as we used to say back in the old marketing days.
Brilliant. I'm just like
It
stunned over
wasn't
here.
it wasn't original with me. I was taught that from the Rochester Women's Network. And we all walked around and you should have seen it was like a giant roaming poker game because everybody's exchanging cards with everybody. But you come home and you put them in your Rolodex back in the day. And you have all of these little notes. Like I remember her, she was my banker, my financial advisor, my car people. They're all from that one networking opportunity. And they should do this for authors. Outside of writing conferences, they should have networking for authors.
That is so
Maybe I'll
smart.
teach that sometime at ACFW.
Yeah, there you go. No, seriously, I have never heard it put in such practical steps, like a how to, because
Yeah.
you get into those networking things are like, writing conferences and you're like sitting
Yeah,
next to
yeah.
somebody and it feels awkward. Like you don't know what you're supposed to do. You don't know how you
Mm-hmm.
say it. And
Mm-hmm.
so then it's like, oh, can I have your business card? But you're right. There are things that you can do to follow up. And it's a missed opportunity if you're not following up.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, how do you follow up without sounding salesy? Well, that's where the personal
Yeah.
piece comes into
Have
place.
that little personal piece, and you'll never remember after you meet 35 people that this lady was the one that had daughters in the English department or something. You'll never remember that. I used to draw
Exactly.
little sketches of people and say blonde hair.
I think that's such a wise way of approaching it. I mean, that right there was gold. So thank you for sharing that with us.
And thanks for being
I'm
with us today, folks. That's all we need for the whole
yeah,
day.
we're good. We're good. We can just end now. No, um, I would love to know how you went, like when you went into your book launch, did you have something you were measuring as far as like what would success look like for you? Did you have something that you're like, if I do this, this, and this, then it'll be a successful book launch? Did you have something like that?
I read a really fascinating book by Charles Stanley that's called Success God's Way. And it's an older book. I think it's maybe 2002 is when it came out. And it basically sort of flips the idea of success and our definition of success versus God's definition of success. And I think that the world is very much with us and informs us exactly what metrics we need to look at, and they never take into account God's harvest. What is God's harvest? And I was doing this book with my Bible study, and I just felt like I need to realign my idea of success and understand what would God consider this as a success. So if I get a review or I get somebody say to me, your book reminded me so much of when I was a Jesus person, and it really broke my heart. And I realized I haven't been walking with him in the same kind of dynamic or bold way. That to me is the big fat success. That's the big win. And I just say, Lord, you bring your fruit from this. You harvest this. You're the Lord of the harvest. So you're going to be the one that decides whether or not my book is a success. And if it has glorified him, and if he's using it in some way to draw people closer to himself, to make them think, am I being authentic? Am I being truthful in my heart? Am I loving the way that I should love? Am I loving out of guilt or gratitude or things and not really sharing a passion? Am I giving in too easily? Am I not giving enough? Just all these questions that we as moral Christian human beings need to ask, because a romance is a romance. Right? You're like, oh, it's all about love. Honey, I just finished rereading Song of Solomon, and I'm like, it's really hot. And I want my books, and I said this to the Lord, I want my books to have the same level of passion that you were like, these two people are absolutely perfect for each other. And here's why. And this is how God is blessing that relationship. And it's not just like, aren't they cute together? Because you can get that out of a Hallmark movie. And the Hallmark movie is not trying to draw you closer to the kingdom of God, at least the ones I haven't seen. So that's my measure of success is, do I see any kind of harvest for the kingdom out of the book? And I have seen it from both books. And in fact, the second book, some of the people that were proofing it and some of the ARC readers and the beta readers were like, this was so, these prayers, some of these interactions in here just brought me to tears. And I was like, win, that's a success for me. And it's not all crying, it's a rom-com. There's a lot of laughing too. I just want to reassure people.
I love what you just said there about realigning your perspective with what God considers success. And I 100% agree. And I do think that sometimes we can get ahead of what God has for our work. And I do think what you talked about there is this idea of the success of your writing, of your craft. If you bring your craft, you're bringing your craft and it's doing what you intended it to do. That's a success. And so I do think that there is something to be said about that kind of success of I'm trying to figure out how to say this without being like, I get what you're saying, but can we talk about this? So I'm not like, I don't want to dismiss what you just said, because what you just said is really, really important and very valuable. And I think that we can get topsy-turvy with things. I mean, this is why we have this podcast. This is why we talk about these things.
Mm-hmm.
We can get really topsy-turvy of like only caring about metrics or trying to make the dollar,
It's the
and forgetting
pendulum
that
thing, right?
the craft is so much a joint effort with the Holy Spirit and a joint effort with utilizing the gifting and talents God has given you to
Mm-hmm.
further the kingdom
Mm-hmm.
in whatever way that looks like. So we can forget that in the pursuit of the dollar, in the pursuit of the metrics, right? But on the flip side, you talked about, and so I want everybody listening, and I want you to hear, like, I totally agree with you 100%.
I'm
But I
hearing you.
do I do have a question though, because you mentioned you donate your profits to Young Living. And so my guess would be that you would want to try to minimize as much as possible the cost
Mm-hmm.
of the book release. but you also want to increase as many sales as possible because your goal is to donate. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as far as that goes, with your launch, did you find that you had made any kind of, I don't want to call them mistakes, but just like maybe you had decided
Adjustment.
something and it cost you a little bit more than you thought it was going to cost, and that maybe you made an adjustment this time around to minimize the cost? Or was it something that in your first launch where you're like, oh, this didn't reach as many people as I had hoped to reach, or I didn't convert as many people? How can I do that better, for the lack of a better word,
Yeah.
so that I can increase what I can accomplish this
Yes.
time
Yes.
around
So
with
the scripture,
donating to
yes,
families?
right. So the scripture tells us that the yield is either 30, 60, or 100-fold, right? So how do we get the 100-fold versus the 30 and the 60? And I'm doing a little private, my own little study about this because I'm fascinated with this idea. Like my goal in life is to hear, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." I'm just
Right.
that's my prize right on the horizon there. I'm headed for that one. And I want him to say, "And you got 100-fold, good girl." Not just like, "Nice try, you got a 30-fold." And I'm very competitive. So it's hard for me not to go like, "I'm going for the 100-fold."
Now,
But
what
I
verse are
think
you referencing right now with the
it's,
30, 60?
gosh, I think it's Mark 4, verses 3 through 9, and then 13 through 20, where he says, "Do you not understand?" I love it when he says that because he's like, "How many times do I have to tell you this?" But so I started thinking, what is it that makes the differentiation? How do you get the different levels? And obviously, he gives you what you can handle because he says that
Mm-hmm.
like some get 5, some get 10, some get 1, and he buries it. So, that was a
Mm-hmm.
lost investment. Well, I think it's how much territory you're willing, how much seed you plant. Like all of those things factor into agricultural yield, right? It's got
Mm-hmm.
to be good seed. You got to
Mm-hmm.
fertilize, you got to tend, you got to water, you got to prune, you got to cultivate, you've got all these things you have to do to make the harvest. And that's where I see marketing comes in.
Mm-hmm.
That's the cultivating. You're cultivating relationships, you're cultivating opportunities. And then you've got the fertilizer. That's the stuff that stinks, but you got to do it anyway, right? And then you're picking your good seeds, so you're honing your craft, you're getting an excellent cover design, you're doing your best as far as formatting it, whether it's Atticus or Vellum or whatever. You're learning those different technologies so that you can use them with ease, and you really just, okay, I know how this works now. Not just sort of, I kind of get it. I hope it works. You're actually getting it to work. So you're taking all of these steps that a farmer would take. Then you're praying for rain and you're praying for sunshine. That's out of your hands, right? God is going to increase, the Lord of the harvest. He's going to increase it. Or he's going to
Mm-hmm.
say, like, if I give you 100-fold right now, you would be the most egotistical author on the planet. So I'm going to start you off with 30 and let's see how we go.
Right.
So I'm aiming for 100, and I don't know if we'll know that we get that until we get to heaven because he's like, "Well, this metric was low, but this was really good." You know. So
Yeah.
that would be my answer, is to try and pay close attention to what you're doing to maximize what you can do and leave the rest to God, whatever you can do. Like you go to writers' conferences or you go to online things or you go to workshops and you say, "Here's how to use King Sumo giveaways. Here's how to
Mm-hmm.
use all these different things that are out." A book funnel. I just took a webinar on book funnel the other day on using your lead magnet to get more ARC readers. I'm like, "Oh, that's really good." So the more you learn, the more opportunity you have to use whatever seed you have. And that could be your time, that can be your money. Like a lot of these things, you join on BookFunnel and they have all of these webinars about how to maximize what you got. I'm like, well, why would you not be taking advantage of those? And
Right.
I'm just tiptoeing into all of
Mm-hmm.
these group promos and giveaways and stuff. And I'm like, I don't really have anything I feel like I could give away at this point. I've only got 3 books. I'm not exactly, I don't have a huge backlist here, folks. I've just got started, which should give a lot of hope to a lot of old ladies out there. I'm just saying. Because if I can do it, you can do it. Let me just put it
Mm-hmm.
that. So, all those things are new territory. I just found out about library thing. Are you hip to library thing? Oh
I've
my
not heard of
gosh.
that one.
It's
I've not heard of that.
free and it just gives you a huge distribution, and you can get ARC readers like nobody's business with this, and they will align your book. Like if you say, okay, I'm doing a, mid-century
Mm.
rom-com and it's kind of literary or it's theatrical or whatever. And they're like, check.
What
So
is
they
this
go through
called?
all of it's called
Huh.
library thing. And they will tell you'll tell them, here's what I'm interested in finding a
Hmm.
readers. And like, my book is like this, Georgette Heyer, Elizabeth Peters,
Yeah.
Nancy Drew, whatever. And then they have all of these readers, and they have zillions of readers, and they will say, oh, that's the kind, and it gives you the exact number of readers
Mm,
that they have that like that book that your book is like.
mm.
And then they send your arc to those readers, because there's a pretty good chance if your book is like Georgette Heyer's, this, whatever, These Old Shades, and your book is similar to that, or Elizabeth Peters, one of her Vicky Bliss novels, and they're like, there's 1,000 people that like this book. So they send your book to their 1,000 arc readers.
Okay. Okay.
And then their arc readers are like, yeah, I really like that. And then now you've got your field of arc readers just opened up
Right.
hugely, and you're
Hmm.
not paying a service. It's not a paid
Yes,
service.
that was my next question because I know of things that do something similar,
Book
but they're all
Sprout
paid.
is one, and Book Sirens. And I found out the hard way because I was like, oh, I'm totally going to get on this year. And then I realized, well, if you're on KDP Select,
Hmm.
you can't
Yeah.
do that because you've signed an agreement. And they're like, well, they probably won't catch you. And I'm like, okay. I
You're like,
really
I don't
don't
want to do
like
it.
the
Yeah.
sound of that. Because
Let's
if I
not
go
touch
to Amazon
that.
jail, I'm really lowering my expectation of getting anything out of this book. Oh, thanks, but
Exactly.
no thanks. But library thing was, and I was too late because they had like their August one had already come and gone, and it would be towards September. And I was like, missed it and literally I missed it by like 4 days. Grr.
That's tough. Yeah.
It's a tough one, but I'll know next time.
Yeah.
I'll know next year. So these things, this is what I feel is our investment as writers, and particularly as independent writers, because we are like the whole shooting match. We are the advertising
Hmm.
agency, we're the design agency. And we talked last time about having to ship out to different, you just outsource. But the more we learn about these things, and this is what this podcast is so great for, is like now
Yeah.
we're sharing the word with people, then we can capitalize on those things and we can leverage them and do a better opportunity the next time. So I didn't have any idea how most of these things, I don't know how Instagram ads work, or um, Facebook ads, don't know anything about those.
Yeah.
Amazon ads, don't know anything about those. But they're on my list. I have a big list of, here's the things on my admin week. I just got this great idea from another, I forget what it was, like a workshop or something. They said, take 1 week out of a quarter and make it your admin week. And each day, like, I'm going to dedicate this day to Amazon ads, and I'm going to
Mm,
learn how to do them. And then the
okay.
next time I'm going to do Facebook ads, and I'm going to learn, I'm going to take a course, or I'm going to go on YouTube, and I'm going to
Hmm.
get a little notebook because some of us are old school. We like binders with little
Yep.
dividers in them. And then we're going to write everything down, and then we're going to know what we're doing instead of
Hmm.
just putzing around all the time and say, well, this is kind of half in and half out. You'll know, is this going to work for me? Is this right for me? Do I not want to bother with this? Is this too expensive for me? Like you were saying,
Hmm.
what's the costs? Well,
Right.
if we find out that library thing is free and we need more ARC readers, well, that's a no-brainer kind of, right?
Right.
You just got to learn
Right.
how it works to get, it's like double Dutch, right? You got to know when to
Hmm.
jump in so you don't get whipped in the back of the head with a rug.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is there anything that you are doing differently this time around than you did last time?
Um, yeah, actually, I've got ARC readers this time. I did not use ARC readers before. And I was out there like beating the bushes for ARC readers
Hmm.
because I didn't know about these services. I didn't know there was a place that's like a slave market or something where you could go in and buy ARC readers. I'm like, this is fabulous. So you're not actually buying review, folks. Relax. I'm just saying that you pay the service so that they get your book out to ARC
Hmm.
readers who might or might not be interested. That's all. They kind of try to align. It's like a dating service, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Kind of
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
it's like The Bachelor, only with books.
The
So,
Bachelor with books. I love that. That's awesome. Now I'm going to
Oh,
refer
that's
to
what I'm doing
those
differently
services.
is I'm trying to learn a little bit more about some of these different services and these different opportunities so that I can maybe figure out which ones are going to work for me next time. And it's a building thing, right? It's every year you learn a little bit more, and people that are a little farther ahead of you. One of my favorite people is Kimberly Keegan, and she writes books, and she's actually in my Bible study with me. And she is just far enough along the way in her journey that she can look back and say, oh, you know what? That is
Hmm.
really not worth it. I went
Hmm.
there and I really regret it. I spent lots of money, or that was
Yeah.
time consuming and it didn't get me anything. It didn't really net me
Hmm.
anything. So thank God for mentors that are willing to
Yes.
share their
So true. So true.
have been there and they've done that and they're like, yeah, that's not worth it. Don't bother with that one.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. So I would like to shift our conversation a little bit. You had mentioned something to me and had suggested we maybe talk a little bit about this. And I
Mm.
was like, yeah, that's really brilliant. And I think that this is probably a conversation that we need to have more of in the writing space. But that's the topic of AI. And before those of you who are listening are like, just
Yeah,
hang
you
on,
can
cheer.
hear them, can't you? You can
Yeah,
just hear them
I
in the
can't.
background going, no.
No, no, no. So I would love to know where you kind of fall in the whole conversation about AI. And specifically, you had brought up to me about the idea of how AI is impacting kind of like fast fiction
Mm.
almost. And then how books like yours and mine are falling more into a niche category. They're a little bit more boutique in a way. And so I'm like, that's a fascinating conversation. And so before we dive into that conversation, why don't you just do a quick summary for those who didn't hear your last conversation with us? What your books are about and kind of why we consider them more like a niche market.
Okay, well, to be succinct as I can, which you have probably already figured out is not easy for me. Um, my books are 1970s rom-coms, which if you do a hashtag on that, you get like 5 hits. And like 70s, you get 3.5 million hits, and then you do hashtag 70s rom-com, and you're down to like 17 people. So this is an almost uncharted territory for us. So already you've separated yourself out from the herd with that. And they're Christian rom-coms, which again, very small, like you are Christian, you're not allowed to laugh. So stop it right now.
Yep.
Knock it
Yep.
off. This is
Hmm.
serious business. So already then you've cut out the herd. You've made the herd even smaller. And they're I want to say that what my reviewers have said and what my ARC readers and my fan club, which is small but loyal, they'll say these books are really intelligent. They're
Mm,
written on a very intelligent level. And in fact, one reviewer said she does not dumb down for her audience. She doesn't talk down to her audience. She assumes a certain level of
mhm,
cultural appreciation of even education. There's classical references in there. This book has a lot of Shakespeare in it, which is either going to make people love it or
mhm.
hate it. And I've already gotten one like I'm giving this 4 stars because there was so much Shakespeare in the beginning. So it's like, if I'm in the corner with Billy Big Boy, I'm okay with that. If I'm cool with that, I love the guy and
It's good
he's
company.
not bad. He's not
Mm-mm.
bad. The one person that gave me 3 stars, I looked her up and she gave Pride and Prejudice 3 stars. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. I mean, I don't know what you're
That's
looking for
gutsy,
in a book, but
right? Give Pride and Prejudice three
what is your
stars,
5 star? I'd love to know what is on your
right?
5 star. But
Gosh, that's a hard earned five
I
stars
know
with that woman.
if you get a 5 star from her, woo!
You're like,
So,
dude, you're stellar.
yes. So the niche is there's a group of people that the French call ink drinkers, and they are consummate devourers of fiction. Like you cannot keep up with these people. They're like
Hmm.
teenagers with Pringles potato chips. They go after these books and they'll eat like 2 books a day sometimes.
Hmm.
And so you know that when you read some of the books, not all, but some of the books that are the frequent flyers for these people, they're not noted for like high flown prose or deep thought, or they're just kind of like a great story, fun characters or sad characters. Mostly they have dogs. I have noticed this. Mostly the men wear some sort of uniform,
Yeah.
firefighters, forest rangers,
Hmm.
Mounties. They have to have a uniform, policeman. There's some kind of mayhem involved. There's suspense. There's a lot of attorneys. There's a lot of action. So they're kind of like 30-minute TV shows that you watch them and they're super entertaining. But you're not going to be years from now like watching the same one over and over again because it had such a deep message. You're just like, oh, that was a sweet love story, or that was really exciting. And that's great.
Yeah.
You need those in your diet, but you can't live on Cheetos.
It makes me
Right.
think of when This Is Us was on. Did you ever watch that show?
No, that was probably out of
Okay.
my era.
Well, it was on, it came out in 2016 and it was on for probably like 5 years, I think.
Oh gosh.
Um, but it was This Is Us. It was highly emotional. Like it was a
Mm,
very deep, all about relationships, really
angsty,
like
very
it was
angsty.
not, well, I wouldn't even say angsty. It was just so much about relational
Mm,
drama.
hmm.
And so it was just about life. And so there would be times when my husband and I would be like, okay, what are we going to watch tonight? And it would be like, not that show. Because it was like,
Can't take that
we
tonight.
can't take that tonight, but let's put on something like a sitcom, and you're
Hmm.
like, I can take the 30 minutes. And so they do have their place,
They
but it's
do.
a different kind of experience. And
It
so
is.
that's not the kind of experience you're cultivating in your books. It's not something that's
No,
like
right.
quick devouring it. Yeah.
It's not, you can't devour that. Well, you can. I guess what kind of a carnivore you are. I mean, like, and that's where titles come in so handy.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
you say to someone, "Will I like your book?" and I would say, "Have you ever read Georgette Heyer? Have you ever
Hmm.
read Elizabeth Peters? Have you ever read A.J. Pierce? Have you ever read P.G. Woodhouse?" And if they
Yeah.
say like, "No, no, 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 no," I'm like, I don't know if you're gonna like my book
Yeah. But
because
like you can't completely like write
oh
it
no,
off
no,
because
I've had
but
people
it's
that are like, I've never read anything like this and I really liked it. And I'm like, great, tell your friends.
yes. Yes.
You know,
It is hard. It is hard with the comp titles sometimes. And I struggled with my novel to find comp
oh
title. And
yeah,
it is hard when you're not like in a specific genre. Which I
yes.
think kind of
They're like
lends itself.
cusping between
Yes. And
genres.
so
Yeah.
like your 70s rom-com, right? So you can lean into, well, do you know what the rom-com tropes are? Like, do you like those things? Well, then my book will probably, but
Well, they
you're in a,
won't though.
they
That's the
won't.
sad part. No, because I'm anti-trope. So
Exactly, exactly. So then it becomes,
it's another slice out of the
you're
herd.
like, how do I communicate to you well
Mhm.
that this is what my book is about
Mhm.
without, because I can't tell you. But okay,
Right, right. I don't know
the
how to tell you. You'll just have to try it on.
yeah, so I guess the whole point of what we're trying to say right now is that a lot of people struggle with this when their
Hmm.
book doesn't conform to something that's like, I have a couple of friends and man, they write in such a really easy to define genre. They can
Yes.
easily say, I write hockey romances, and people know
Right.
what
And
they
you
mean.
don't have
Right.
any confusion about what you're going to get when you open that book. You're
Right.
like,
You don't.
I love hockey romances. This is a hockey romance. I'm
Yeah.
in.
And I think those are the ones that become really easy to consume quickly is when
Yes.
you know what you're getting because I'm having a revelation as we're talking.
Great.
I think part of the reason why they're so easy to consume is because the book doesn't have to do the hard work of setting expectations.
Oh, that's good.
Right? Because you know what you're getting yourself into. It doesn't
Yes.
have to bring the reader to a certain point. So
Right,
the reader
right,
can
right,
go
right.
in really fast and they
Hmm.
can just keep going.
They
And
get to the
so,
good part right
yeah,
away.
there's no setup really having to be, not that they don't have to set up their book, and there is craft involved, but it's just a little bit
Certainly.
less work on the book's part. It doesn't have to
Hmm.
do as much heavy lifting for the
Exactly.
reader.
Yeah.
And so the
Yeah.
reader can just consume, get in and sit down and start,
Hmm.
whereas a book that is a little bit outside that has to do some heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
Your book has to set the stage. We're in the 70s. We have characters who are Christians. This is where they're at in their Christian journey. This
Yeah.
is the
This has got
challenges they're
you.
facing. This is the person that she's considering. Like there's a lot to be doing in that. And so there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of heavy lifting your book has to do at the beginning to lay out the expectation and then continue to hold it as it goes through the novel. And
It's kind of
so,
like world building in a way, isn't it?
yes,
It's
yes,
it's a
very much
world
so.
building kind of thing, except it's a world you've never been to before.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like
Mm-hmm.
Planet Zorkon, but where every other military sci-fi thing happens is like, I know I'm going to see some kind of really scary mechanical thing is going to come over the horizon and terrorize the aliens or the good guys or the
Mm-hmm.
bad guys or whatever. So yeah, if you have a non-niche book, and I really like you said boutique, because when you go into a boutique, you're getting a curated shopping experience where somebody is like, I am aiming for a particular audience, and it's very narrow band audience.
Mm-hmm.
You come into a boutique and you either love what you see in there, or you're like, this is totally not my jam. And so the
Yeah.
books that are like that, you read the couple of pages, you read the back, and you're like, that's intriguing. So you look at the inside and you're reading along and you're like, oh, I'm picking up what she's laying down. I get it. I
Yeah.
like this. Or you're like, this is too much Shakespeare, man. I can't do this.
And I
I
think
feel
that's
like
where
I'm back in English class. No.
yeah. I do think that our marketing, that's where we have to do a little bit more work with our
Yes.
marketing is to kind
Hmm.
of set some of that expectation before you land
Hmm.
in it. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, you're going to have to put in some work. But that kind of brings us back to this conversation of AI and the fact
Oh,
that,
yeah, let's circle back. Yeah.
yeah, that, we're kind of in this situation where people are using AI to craft their whole books and make it happen a lot faster. And I'll just be honest. I'll put this out here because I don't know if I've mentioned this in episodes previous or not, but my stance on AI is that it is a really useful tool to do all the parts of writing that aren't storytelling.
That aren't actual writing.
That aren't actual crafting of sentences and pulling things. I was reading my novel to my husband just this last week, and I read a sentence, and he's like, I stopped and I was like, I used ChatGPT to help me figure out the words to use right here. And it was because I was describing fashion and I'm not a fashion person. So I don't know how you describe the way that the guy's hair kind of like goes up and to the left, that professional like coif, I think is what they're called. And I had to look that up. And so I used ChatGPT to help me figure out what that stuff was because sometimes Googling isn't enough. Like you can't get Google doesn't understand
You
you.
can't
And
describe
you're
it
like
enough.
so vague. You're like, I don't know that thing, that the thing with
Seems
the
like a
thing.
crew cut. Are you talking about a
Yeah.
crew cut? No, no,
Like,
I'm
what are
not
you
talking about a
talking
crew cut.
about? Yeah, no. So, like, in that way, Chat GPT was very helpful for me when I was writing my book, but I never used it to actually craft my sentences.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
did use tools that have a component of AI, like a Pro Writing Aid, that,
Hmm.
for grammar checks and things like that. Um, and I did use ChatGPT for things like, um, is this realistic? If
Oh,
this
uh-huh.
and this and that, if I had my characters do these things in this particular industry, is that realistic? And then
Hmm.
I would go double check stuff on websites and things
Hmm.
that it would send me to. And so, in that regards, I don't have a problem with AI. Where I think for me, the problem lands is when we start replacing the effort of crafting sentences and storytelling. I don't think the story lands as deeply and as creatively as it could if you would come from your soul with it. So how do you feel about that? And have you used AI at all with this
Not at
book?
all. And
Okay.
I have never used it. And I'm so sorry that you said, what do you think about that? Because now you're going to hear, now you're
Hey,
going to
go
hear
for
what
it.
I, let's back up with AI for a second. Now, you remember the early days of illustrations done by AIs when they had six fingers and no thumb.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody was creeped out because they were like, there's something real looking about this, but there's something that gives me the willies about this.
Yeah.
And then they got better and they actually told the robots or the aliens, who's ever running AI, um, we need a thumb and four other fingers. That's how
Right.
humans work. And they're like, okay, got it. So now they don't have creepy fingers, but there's always something. And now it's gotten to the point where it's almost impossible to tell if the photograph has been AI tinkered or not,
Mm-hmm.
which scares out of me because
Mm-hmm.
I look at this and think they're going to start building historic photographs to prove that this didn't
Yeah.
happen or that this didn't happen or that this is fake. And
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to be able to tell the difference. And then you have a whole generation that can be hoodwinked by
Mm-hmm.
AI. So I just don't want to touch it with a 20-foot pole. When I found out that Pro Writing Aid had AI, it was AI driven, I was like, okay, I'm just going to call an English teacher. I'm just
Yeah.
going to call an English teacher. I was an English major. I should be
Mm-hmm.
able to figure this out. If I can't, I'll call somebody, but I'm
Right.
not gonna. I just feel like I'm giving small bits of my soul over to AI
Mm-hmm.
to monkey with and to use my stuff. So I hate the idea that they're, sort of cannibalizing books. And they just had a huge, you probably heard about this huge lawsuit where people
Mm-hmm.
were suing the pants off of some AI development company because they were just reaping or harvesting. The whole thing just gives me, it's like a science fiction
Yeah.
movie
The
waiting to
science
happen.
fiction. I love that.
It really,
Um,
really is like The
I do.
Harvest, I think is the
Yeah.
name.
So I had a conversation with somebody in an interview, and we got into this conversation a little bit. It hasn't aired yet, but it will soon. Because we were talking about it from the perspective of using AI for audiobooks as
Oh,
voices for
uh-huh,
your voice.
uh-huh. Like the fake voices. Yeah.
But he was talking about it learning from other authors. And I pushed back a little bit, and then he pushed back. And that's, I think we had like a decent conversation. But I do think that we have to acknowledge that we have always been learning off of previous people for
Of course.
centuries. Where the problem lies is that there was no um
Permission.
not even the permission, because it's not like Shakespeare gave us permission to learn from him. It's not even that. It's more of like we knew we were learning from Shakespeare. So like
Right.
a
It was
citation.
intentional. Yes, it was
Yeah.
intentional.
And so
Yeah.
like we know whose this thing is modeled
The
after. And with
acknowledgments were
AI,
there.
you
Yes.
don't have an idea of who it's
Right.
being modeled after.
Right.
But
Right.
what I think has happened, and I think that I would really encourage people, especially those who have more niche genres like you and I, where chat GPT or any other AI program, they're going to spit out things that is a conglomerate. Oh my gosh, I can't say the words today.
Some
It
conglomerate. There we go.
Yes,
That's it.
there we go. It is a hodgepodge of
It is.
different models. It is
Right.
just pulling together and learning from all these different voices
Hmm.
so that it has become the Midwestern accent,
It
right?
has. It has. It has. It's true. It is. It still scares me. And I think it's because I'm just an older generation.
Well,
I
and
don't.
where I was going with that is because it's become the Midwestern accent,
Yeah.
it's not unique,
It is
and
not.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so for those of us who are writers, I almost want to say like let's not be scared of AI, but see it as an opportunity for our unique voices to really shine through in
Well,
the
that's
creative
yeah.
space.
Yes, and that's where I'm headed with this partially is um it's such a homogenized voice because it is a melting pot, right? So it has become unidentifiable except in its own weird way
Hmm.
because like you can tell, I can anyway. At this point, it'll probably get to the point where nobody can tell. They'll be like, let's pretend the AI is Hemingway. And
Hmm.
like suddenly it has a Hemingway-esque type of voice. And you're like, wow, that doesn't sound like AI. Well, if you don't
Hmm.
know Hemingway, you don't realize it sounds like Hemingway, right? So,
Right.
but the whole idea of artisan authors is this idea of the boutique or the sort of hyper individualized or even partially individualized, and that's in reaction to the mass produced the AI written that's like a pulp fiction kind of thing. It's just like they're cranking out stuff that they know will be accepted. And Thomas Umstead Jr., which I'm sure many of your listeners and viewers are familiar with, he just did a really fantastic episode on AI and artisan authorship. And he was talking about we're entering an era in where the readers that are the ink drinkers they won't care if it's AI written. They just want the stories and they don't care as much about like if it's pretty well written and it's a rip snorting story and it's in their genre and they're hungry for that, they're going to go for it. And this does give an opportunity for writers that are more niche or writers that have a very distinctive narrative style, very distinctive. Like
Hmm.
you read something by Hemingway, for instance, you're like, this is Hemingway. This
Right.
is F. Scott Fitzgerald. This is Louisa May Alcott. I recognize this is, Frances, what's her name?
Burnett.
Yeah,
Burnett.
no, but I love her. But
Yeah.
so I'm trying to think of someone more contemporary because I'm sounding like,
Oh,
100-year-old. I'm right. I'm
your
I'm calling from the
your English
20s and the
background is coming
Victorian
out.
era. Right. Oh, I'm only 100 years behind the curve, folks, so don't mind me. But you can tell some authors just from the get-go. And if your voice is one of those where they say, this person has a funny, convoluted sentence structure. She is lyrical. She is poetic. She is snappy. Her dialogue is so snappy. I recognize it right away. Like AJ Pierce is one of my favorite There we go. She's a contemporary writer. Her voice is very British. And it's very sarcastic and snarky, but very heartfelt. And I
Mm,
think if I would pick up a piece of prose and not know it was hers and read it, I'd be like, wow, this really reads like AJ Pierce. And
hmm.
that's one of my goals is for people to be able to pick up a piece of mine. And whether I'm right now, this is a little clue. Do you see this picture in the background here?
Hmm.
Yes. So it
Which,
says snow trains. Let's go skiing, the snow trains. I'm
hmm.
actually writing a lead magnet that's set in the 1930s, and that's the inspiration from it. But even though it's written in the 1930s, I think people that know my style, they're going to read it and they're like, this is Marlene all over the place.
Hmm.
I recognize she's so sarcastic. She's just
Right.
so, she's got that super convoluted sentence structure that just nobody else will touch and that every editor wants to get their hands on it. They just want to
Yeah.
chop it to smithereens. Like, oh my gosh, this sentence is 15 words long. I'm like, yeah, and I had to chop 12 words out of it to get it down to that. So I love the idea that with all of the pulp fiction, the AI pulp, there's going to be this, I believe, like a renaissance of authorial voice and
Hmm.
distinctive narrative style, and that people that are a little more, I don't want to say discriminating because I don't want to sound pejorative against
Hmm.
people that just love, 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 love their books because God bless them, they're books. So we're grateful that
Right.
they're reading books. But people that are looking for maybe a deeper, more involved experience with a book so that
Hmm.
they know they're not going to read it in a day. It's going to take
Right.
them, a couple of days, maybe even a week, and they're going to be
Hmm.
thinking, wow, that's a new thought, or that's taking me in a different direction. Rosanna
Hmm.
M. White just wrote a book, The Librarian of Burned Books, I think, or it might be The Library of Burned Books. But her
Okay.
marketing campaign was about read reading widely, like read out of your genre.
Mm.
Try something different and don't just stick in your tiny little lane. Like every time you
Hmm.
go to McDonald's, you only get the fish fillet. Try the cheeseburger. So
Hmm.
she is really campaigning for people to recognize this is how books get banned is
Yeah.
because people stay in their little circle and they don't dare step outside. So I think as artisan authors, we are providing some of that bandwidth of people to
Right.
go into some different directions and say, well, this doesn't have any tropes that I recognize, but I really like this book. Or
Right.
I've never read a 1970s book before, probably because there aren't any out there. Well, there's five or six, but
And
maybe I
two of
need to
which are yours.
do it with your mind, right? Right, that's right. That's right. It seems to be like a monopoly. Well, it's not on purpose. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, right? So, and to try that, to just read outside of genre. So I would say as a business model, that
Mm-hmm.
you're either choosing to be part of a chain store or a boutique, right? As an
Mm-hmm.
author. And maybe you want to do both. Maybe you're like, I want to crank out some quick hits. But I think here's the not the danger, but here's the challenge. The story of John Henry, the tall tale of John Henry, who had the steam hammer, right? And he's going to carve out I don't know what it was, the cave or something.
Mm-hmm.
He's building a, who knows? I can't remember. That was fourth grade. And there's a machine
Are you
that's
talking
doing.
about the guy with for like the railroad?
Yes, 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 yes. It
Okay.
was the
Yeah.
railroad. Yeah, John Henry. John Henry was a mighty man. There's
Yeah.
always a song with those guys.
Yeah.
So, but there's a steam hammer that's going to do it faster, faster,
Mm-hmm.
cheaper. There's no retirement plan for the steam hammer. There's no, there's
Yeah.
no day off. So they have a test,
Mm-hmm.
and John Henry does beat the steam hammer, but then he dies.
Mm.
Sorry, that's a spoiler, folks. I hate to ruin your tall tale enjoyment. But if you don't know what happens to John Henry by now, you must have skipped fourth grade. Maybe
Yeah.
you just went right to fifth. Anyway, and then the steam hammer is the next day, it's still on the job. And so Thomas Umstead uses this example and he says, here's the challenge, or here's some expectations, is that AI is going to be able to crank out books much, much faster than any human can.
Mm-hmm.
Even the people that are using rapid release to make a lot of money. And that's one of the best ways to make
Yeah.
money, is to crank out these books like six a year, or some people crank them out every 6 weeks. And these are human beings that are writing these
Mm-hmm.
legitimate books, and they are
Mm-hmm.
just speedy, 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 but they'll never be faster than AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
the people that are depending on this for their income are now getting edged out by a machine, kind of like,
Yeah.
the cotton gin, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's another industrial revolution that's happening.
Yeah.
So
It's
people
true.
readers are either going to say, I prefer a book that I know was written by a person because I want to connect with that soul deep feeling that I don't want to see six fingers. I
Mm-hmm.
want to see four fingers and a thumb in my writing. And I think that's the fascinating part, is I think there's going to be a shift in the readership where people
Yeah.
are like, I don't care if a robot write, I just need something to read on the train on the way home that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really, boggle my mind. And then you've probably seen on Instagram, this woman, young woman is reading a book and she's sobbing, and she's
Mm-hmm.
on the train and she's just sobbing her heart out. And everyone in the train is kind of like, oh my
What's
gosh.
going on with you? Yeah.
But probably that wasn't written by a robot. In fact, we know it wasn't. It was written by a
Right.
contemporary author. So I think that there's going to be not necessarily a dividing of the ways, but there's going to be some distinction
Yes.
between, you know, manufactured books and
Mm-hmm.
written books. So
Well, it
that's
just
what I
makes
think
me
about
it makes
AI.
me think of things that are produced in factories versus the person
Yes.
who's making something in their pottery studio,
Right.
and you
Right.
can just tell the difference. And I think that goes back to the fact that we're created in the image of a creative God. And I think that
Yes.
when we tap into that and we slow down, we're wise and we're stewards, and I don't have any problem with
Yes.
us trying to make money off of stuff like that.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
you got to be able to pay for things.
Paul
But
made tents. Okay. He charged for those
yes,
tents. So,
exactly. But at the end of the day, yes, AI is concerning, but at the end of the day, you are made in the image of a creative God, and
mhm.
that divine imprint
Yes.
on our creativity is what resonates with people. And it's not something that a robot can
I believe.
truly
Yeah.
reproduce. And so, in that regards, I think we're safe. But I do think we have to be willing to do the work of slowing
Yeah.
down and paying attention to that creativity,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and doing the work of how can I improve my craft, but
Hmm.
how can I pay attention to the creative bent that's already inside of my being, inside of my
Yes.
DNA, because that's how God has created me to be. And so if we do that, if we slow down and we pay attention to that, I think we're going to make beautiful books that really touch people's hearts.
And then knowing that God is preparing the hearts of those readers, that that's the book they needed to read.
Mm-hmm.
And so when younger authors come along and they say, I want to make books like blah blah because she's a bestseller, then you are depriving your future readers of the book that your voice and only your voice could
Yeah,
make. So I love what you just said about that the Lord puts his divine imprint and his Holy Spirit is like, this is why you need to write a book with so much Shakespeare in it. Because there's
hmm
an English teacher who lost her religion in 1985 in her divorce. And when she reads this, she's going to be like, oh my gosh, somebody loves Shakespeare. A Christian loves Shakespeare. And
exactly.
I know, and you know, that if I took this book to a publishing house, they'd be like, it's great story. Can we get rid of the first 5 chapters that have so much Shakespeare in it? I'd be like,
Exactly.
yeah, no,
Exactly. And one last thing, because we could keep going on and on and on, but
we could.
we need to wrap up the conversation. So this isn't a 2 hour episode. But one last thing on that note, I think the beautiful thing, the publishing industry has been having to reckon with a lot of things in the last 20 years with
Yeah.
the emerging of the e-reader and then Amazon and the closing of a lot of bookstores and then social media and influencers and all this. And in some ways, they've done a good job of navigating that. And in other ways, they've done a very poor job, especially the Christian publishers and especially with regards to Christian fiction.
Mm,
But I think this is the one of the things that has happened in the Christian publishing industry is we kind of churned out a lot of books that sounded like each other
yeah.
because the same people were acquiring them and then the
Yes.
same people were demanding to read what they knew to expect. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have authors who have beautiful stories and can write well, but they're the ones producing all the books and all the books start to sound like each other. And so
Yep.
you don't have unique niches, you don't have unique stories, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't have unique storytellers. And so the publishing houses have just as much a responsibility to recognize what AI is about to do with
Mm,
churning out books that are, they can do a good job of it. And to take a step back and say, how can we find more unique voices? But additionally, indie authors have a great opportunity to
mm-hmm.
fill in the gaps and not wait on somebody to validate their thoughts and their ideas about what stories to put out there.
That is brilliant because so many upcoming authors or aspiring authors, they want to get that guarantee of success, and they feel that the only way they can do it is, as you put it, is to get that thumbs up from the gatekeepers who are looking for an exact replica of everything they've just sold last year so that they can continue to make money because they know there's an audience, a paying audience for that. And
There
that's the
is.
business side, you know. So instead of encouraging them, you know, yes, I love this different voice. You know, they're like, we need to homogenize the voice so that we know we can sell it.
And it comes down to the fact that they have very limited marketing budgets.
For sure.
And some houses have done this where they've just kind of created a like we were talking about before, it's almost like a genre that they're putting out there. And so then it does that does the heavy lifting for the reader. Oh,
Mhm.
this is from such and such publishing house, then it probably is going
I
to
know it's
have
going to be this.
this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in one instance, that's been really nice for Christians to be like, okay, I can anticipate that I'm not going to find this, and this in this book. I'm not going to have to deal with that. Right. And that's good in terms of like, I just don't want smut in front of my face right now. Right.
Every
And so
door
you're
closed, all feet on the floor. Right.
right. Yeah, exactly. And like sometimes you're like, I just don't want to have to be like navigating
To
that
police
temptation.
it for
Right.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you're okay with going with books that have kind of a reputation. But at the same time, like I said, the publishers have an opportunity to start acquiring different voices that can't be easily replicated by AI. And I think they have the opportunity now to do it. And I think there's a lot of really um, well meaning and well intentioned and people who want that to happen in
Mhm.
their publishing houses. Editors is what I'm talking about, acquisitions editors.
Mhm.
They want that to happen. We have literary agents that are trying to look for these voices, but I think it has to start with the writer being willing to trust their own voice and say,
Mhm.
I'm going to make this the book that I'm going to write and
Yes.
be confident in my own storytelling, in my own storytelling voice
Mhm.
that regardless of how this gets out there, it's going to get out there
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
literary agents and the acquisitions editors can't take that book into the traditional publishing world
Oh
unless
gosh.
the writer is first confident that their artisan book is worth it. And
Yeah.
so that's where think that I would think you would agree, be confident in your storytelling abilities, be confident in the story you have to share, and
Yes.
don't be worried about, not don't be worried, but use wisdom, use research,
Hmm.
genre research, and all that. But trust the creativity that's been entrusted to you.
And this goes back to something that I was hoping that we would get to, so we kind of like tiptoed over into this. But if you know your end game as a writer, why am I writing? If you're writing because you need an income, like your kids don't have shoes, you are not going to be able to afford to be an artisan author, at least not at first,
Mhm.
until you have developed enough books, enough of a backlist, enough of a following that you know that you are respected enough as an author that you can then throw out the oddball book that you're interested in
Let's
writing,
be
your
honest.
passion product.
If your kids need shoes, don't be a
Don't
writer
be an
right now.
author, right? Right. Yeah. No, go work somewhere else and write your books on the side
Yeah,
because your kids
it
are going to
takes
go
a bit.
barefoot for a long time if you're
Yes,
waiting. Yes.
yes,
And I think that's something that people need to recognize. And I think there's a sort of a lingering fantasy that
yeah.
I'm gonna write my book and it's gonna be a bestseller and it's gonna get out there and it's gonna be on Oprah's list and whoever else
Yeah.
has a list and you're gonna see it in the president's hands someday and then it's gonna be off and running and I'm gonna get a huge advance and I'm like, those days are, as far as I can tell, gone, even if they ever existed.
They really never existed. It was
I
very
That was
unique
a
unicorns
Hollywood
that were made
thing.
to seem like they were
Hmm.
horses, but they weren't. They were always unicorns.
They were always unicorns. That's right. They were not normal. Like
The rest
if
of
you're
us are just mules over here
we're
carrying our
just
loads
donkeys
and trying to.
or something lower, right? A word that is used in the King James Bible. I'm
Right,
just saying.
exactly.
So, if you know your end game and looking at what you're doing with actual wisdom, saying,
Hmm.
I'm writing this book for fill in the blank. I'm writing it for myself. I'm writing it for legacy. I'm writing it to touch hearts. I'm writing it to make someone laugh. Know your why and
Hmm.
then write to that. Because if you start writing to, okay, I have to please this and this and this, this, I'm looking at an invisible pub board. I'm pretending that you'll drive yourself nuts and you'll second guess every single word you write.
Hmm.
You're like, well, is
So
this going to
true.
be acceptable to some mythical agent? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be no, even when you've done all that, because by now you've just flattened your voice completely. And if they can get that voice from one of their stable of writers, why would they hire you? Why would they even invite you in? Because you don't have anything new to the table. Not that they want anything new, but
I think some of them do. I
I
think
would
sometimes
like
they're strained.
believe that
Yeah, I
too.
know. I
But I
know.
think as competition gets more and more
Yes,
intense with AI, I
yes,
think they're going to either pull back and say, we need to be even more cautious,
yeah. Hmm.
or they're going to be like, this is ridiculous. We're going to start producing what we want. We're going to put something more creative out there, which I hope that's the way they go, but we'll see.
I I really have enjoyed this conversation, Marlene. But before we go, I want to make sure that people know how to get your new book because you are an artisan. You are somebody who has crafted some really fun, unique stories. And so I want to make sure that people can find them. So how can they find them? How can they follow you? All of that.
Oh, well, thank you for that opportunity because as an indie published author, we need all the help we can get, right? And they can go to marlinewilliams.com and Marline is spelled Marline. I like in ice cream.
Hmm.
Marline Williams.com. Williams spelled like just like you would imagine.com. And all the information is there. You can go to Amazon. And if you type in love the one you're with, Marlene Williams, or even just love the one you're with, Marlene, Marline, then they'll get there. Or All Men Are Liars. And I just have to recommend that if you buy that book, just leave it on the coffee table and listen to what everybody in the house has to say about the title, because you will get more entertainment than before you even open the book. You'll get entertainment.
Hmm.
Um, and the third book is, like I said, hopefully coming out September 1. And there's a Christmas book that you'll see on my Amazon page that's called Christmas in the Cascades. So that's kind of a nice little departure for me. I will be at some live events in New York, and and in Pennsylvania. So that'll be listed on my webpage. So pretty much everything you want to know is on that webpage. But Rachel, because I like to give your listeners and readers a little something special, or viewers, I'm going to send you a link to a secret chapter that was not included in the book. It's a bonus chapter. It was one that I loved it. I wrote it, I loved it, and then I was like, I've got to cut this book somewhere. So I cut that one out, but I set it aside. And so I think your audience will really enjoy that, and they will be the first ones to read it. So that's kind
Wow,
of
that
exciting.
is cool.
And there's some other things that I'll be doing, but everything will be on the webpage, marlinewilliams.com, and they can catch me there. And one other thing I want to add is that just bear in mind, if you're listening to this and you are a Christian author, I just want to give you some encouragement to say, just as Rachel was saying, this is a gift from God, that you are the only one that got this gift. I might have gotten a writing gift, and Rachel did, but I didn't get your writing gift. And the words that he gave you and the stories that he's giving you are unique to you. They are unique to you, and they've been given to you to encourage and uplift and edify some other person that's like you. And you're probably not like me, and I'm not like Rachel. We've each had individual life experiences, and the Lord is like, I want you to write this so that someone else can be lifted up and blessed by it. So I highly encourage you, no matter what you hear about the business tanking or everything, I mean, like all this scary information out there, you are not a six-fingered AI robot. You are a beautiful, beautiful creation of the God who creates out of nothing. And that's what we as writers do. We create out of substance not yet seen. So we are echoing the divine gift of the Lord in our creativity. And that is nothing to sneeze at. That is a beautiful thing. So I highly encourage you to out of the drawer and set it out there and let somebody be blessed by your writing.
Mm, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Marlene. Thank you for all those beautiful words and
My pleasure.
that encouragement. I think that will definitely help somebody today. I know that just did for me. So I
Oh,
appreciate that. Thank you again for just coming down here and sharing your thoughts and your experience and your wisdom. Um, yeah, just thank you for coming on the show.
it, honestly, it's a pleasure. And I was so excited thinking I get to talk to you again, because I really enjoy the exchange of ideas. I look forward to talking with you because you talk to so many different people. So I know that your perspective is a wide one, and I love that.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you to those of you who are listening today. Join us here next time to learn more about the business of Christian fiction. Bye.